Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And what a good evening it is. It's so beautiful, and so beautiful to see the grounds of Aptucxet so full of people for this special event. My name is Mavis Robinson, and I'm the president of the Bourne Historical Society, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you all to this, our inaugural Juneteenth celebration. As we planned for this over the last few months, we weren't sure if anybody would come, and so it's wonderful to have such a wonderful collection of faces, of people who have supported us for years and years, and also many new folks. We're just so grateful that you are here to join us tonight for the celebration. I'm very grateful also for the folks that are sitting behind me. These are our readers and the folks that we've been collaborating with over the last few months to bring you this program. So as the night goes on, you'll be meeting them one by one. But I want to start off just saying a little something about the Bourne Historical Society and this event for us. The Bourne Historical Society, we're old. We've been around for a while. We were started in 1921. So the Bourne Historical Society is over 100 years old, and our mission is to serve as a bridge between the past and the present for the town of Bourne, and to be sort of the keepers of the history and the keepers of the story. We run this museum, the Aptucxet Trading Post Museum, which is not just this building, but it includes this building. This whole 12-acre property is the main part of our mission. And essentially, as an organization, we are storytellers. And the power of storytellers, especially when you're an official storyteller in the community, is in whose stories are you going to be telling and which stories will be told. So when we started off, we were telling a pilgrim story. That was the story that really lit the fires and the interest of the founders of our organization. They were inspired by those English immigrants who came here 400 years ago. As time went on, we got more sophisticated in the story that we told, and we realized that history didn't start 400 years ago. And in fact, for thousands and thousands of years, people have been living on these lands and living their own history. So we've been trying to be more inclusive about making sure we talk about our Wampanoag sisters and brothers when we tell the story of this trading post as well. And this is a first time of expanding our stories even further, knowing that Bourne, the town of Bourne, my hometown where I grew up, it goes beyond just the descendants of pilgrims, and it goes beyond the descendants of Wampanoag people. There are lots of different stories. We're really excited to be diversifying the stories that we tell, and we're thrilled to be part of this event supported by Mass Humanities and Mass Cultural Council to tell this particular story of a very important American, Frederick Douglass. So before I go any further, I want to introduce a really important collaborator. This woman is from the Bourne Wareham Race Amity group, and she has been such an incredible partner as we have planned and executed this event. So please welcome Wanda Harmson.
Thank you so much. I want to say welcome to everybody, and I want to also say how exciting this is for us from the Bourne Wareham Race Amity Group. We've been around since 1992. We are a Baha'i-inspired organization, and what we try to do is bring people together from different races, ethnicities, and we try to foster cross-cultural, cross-racial engagements and friendships. And this is very important to us, and this partnership with the Bourne Historical Society is historical. We are making history tonight. This is the first time that I can remember, having lived in Bourne for the last 30 some odd years, that we are having such a wonderful partnership and telling stories that are so diverse that we don't often hear about. So I'm so excited to be part of this event tonight. So thank you so much to the Bourne Historical Society and to all of you for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate that. So I mentioned that the history of this land goes back thousands and thousands of years before there was a written European history about it. We like to be aware of that, we like to think of that, and we like to acknowledge the folks who lived here before any immigrants arrived. So I'm thrilled to announce the chair lady of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, and a select person in the town of Bourne to acknowledge that land ownership and start us off with a blessing. So please welcome Melissa Ferretti.
Good evening. Thank you for all coming. I will start with an introduction. Natasuis, Melissa Ferretti, Nutomas, Zikwana Makwapakwe, Ka Natai, Aptucxet, Bourne. What I've said to you in my Wampanoag language is good evening. My name is, or I am called, Melissa Ferretti. My genealogy is, or I am of Herring Pond, Wampanoag. I am from Plymouth, and I live here in Bourne. So I'm going to start with a Wampanoag prayer for all time by Jesse Little Doe Baird. Manat ka nikona hachi, creator and ancestors. Katapatanamu wachi wami teakwasa nish. I thank you for all things. Katapatanamu wachi wami kisak. I thank you for the sky. Katapatanamu achi anakwasa. I thank you for the stars. Katapatanamu achi aki. I thank you for the land. Katapatanamu achi sipuat. I thank you for the rivers. Katapatanamu achi katahana. I thank you for the oceans. Katapatanamu achi wami awasa. I thank you for all creatures. Katapatanamu achi wami naton kosa. I thank you for all my relations. Ananamanian, namanat, wipi, wanikak. Help us to see only what is good. Ananama, anian, asinat, wipi, sompak. Help us to do what is right. Aho. I will move on. So today I have also been asked to do the land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements today are used by Native peoples and non-Native peoples to recognize and honor the first peoples of this place in which we live, in this land. Those who are the original stewards of this place for which we are and we coexist with you all today. This evening, I will share a condensed version of certainly a much larger land acknowledgement. This is going on all over the state. Many municipalities are working toward land acknowledgement. Native people love their red, white, and blue. We love our flag. I'm a proud American, but I'm also a proud citizen of my tribe. And throughout the state and throughout the country, these land acknowledgements have become very important to acknowledge that. Our shared unity as peoples of this place. So when we stop and salute our flag at each meeting or at each committee meetings that we do, it's important that we think about what the people who were here first. So today we give thanks to this sacred place, what is known today as Bourne. This place we stand on today is at the heart of what we call the Wampanoag Nation and is the traditional homeland of the Herring Pond Wampanoag Indian people. We have called this land home for thousands of years. Our ancestors are buried here, and our descendants can still be found here walking amongst you all today, along with the many other tribal communities and direct descendants of these tribes throughout the Commonwealth. The history of Bourne and the Massachusetts colony as a whole is complex, we know. What happened here on these lands impacted all native nations across the New England and eventually spread far and wide across this country and up through the Canadian Maritimes. The spread of colonization and slavery resulted in armed conflict, murder, enslavement, dispossession of land, and it was a direct assault on Native culture and life ways. But as we move on and we start here this evening in a good way, we want to remember each other and the unity that we all should be sharing as a continued existence here in this land. May we always be grateful, treat one another well, and never forget the first peoples of this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Melissa made remarks at a previous event that have really stuck with me about the role of being a speaker and the role of being a listener. And it can become a habit to feel like you're the one speaking and you're the one telling the stories. And when I learned from Melissa and I learned from other folks who have a different experience than I do, I'm thrilled and honored to be in that learner mode and that listener mode. So thank you so much. So part of what we're hoping to accomplish here is a sense of unity. And just as a quick moment of housekeeping, as you walked in here, was everybody able to get either a program and or text of the speech? Do we have extras to give out, or do we have, anybody need? Okay, wonderful. All right. So, we really, in our planning and in this evening, unity is the theme. So something that we wanted to do at the beginning to really pull us all together is to sing together. Music is the universal uniter. So I'm going to welcome up a wonderful singer who's part of our committee to lead us in a song that I think we all know. So please welcome Maureen Dunn.
Can you hear me? Okay. We're going to open with America the Beautiful, and I'd really love it if you sang or hum along with us. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed your grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. Part of what we're hoping this evening would be is a learning opportunity. And towards that end, we have partnered with two great scholars. On the back of the program, I've provided the scholar's statement from our program scholar, Donna Denizet, who's an incredible academic. She lives in Washington, D.C. and teaches at an all-boys school there. But she is a Bourne hometown girl. And we look forward to when Dawn is going to be done teaching and can be with us full time. But she really was the heart and soul of this project and was our guiding light. She inspired many of the activities and the plan of events here. So we know Donna is with us. She called me while she was driving to say that she was thinking of us. So please take a moment to read Donna's statement so you can kind of understand the background of what we're trying to accomplish here. We're also very lucky to have another scholar here. Our moderator for this evening is a local college professor, Dr. Maggie Lowe. She's a professor of American history at Bridgewater State University. She's been an invaluable member of our team and has guided and led us actively in our meetings as we've been planning and figuring out the last details of tonight. And she'll be here to guide us tonight as we read these words and process what they mean. So please welcome Maggie Lowe.
Good evening. It's a delight to see everyone here tonight and to participate in this program and have this opportunity to engage with and listen to the words of the brilliant and always eloquent Frederick Douglass on this first Bourne Historical Society celebration of Juneteenth. First, I want to acknowledge that what we're doing here takes courage. We are engaging with a difficult chapter in American history, one that challenges how well the nation has lived up to its professed ideals of freedom, democracy, and equality for all. the very ideals for which the American Revolution was fought and for which we celebrate the 4th of July. Being here tonight means that you are willing to have a conversation about America's complicated racial history. Though we often say we need to have such conversations, we often find it difficult to do so. I'd like to begin the conversation by offering some context for the speech to deepen our understanding of the reading you're about to hear. As most of you may know, Juneteenth is a bittersweet holiday. Sweet in that we're celebrating the emancipation of the last enslaved African Americans for whom freedom finally came on June 19, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that more than 250,000 enslaved black people in the state were free by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. Yet it's bitter as well, as it reminds us that, as historian Edmund Morgan has stated, the central paradox of American history was that the revolutionaries who were so dedicated to liberty maintained a system of labor that required the denial of liberty. Freedom and slavery grew up side by side. In 1860, at the outbreak of the Civil War, there were 4 million enslaved black Americans living in the United States. As Charles Blow wrote yesterday in the New York Times, perhaps the best way to consider Juneteenth is not as the moment when black people attained freedom, but as a moment in the long struggle to realize that freedom. Still the sweet. African Americans have celebrated this day as the second Independence Day since the 1860s. They held picnics, dances, musical performances, and all manner of community events. In 1980, Texas became the first state to have a holiday on Juneteenth, and in 2021, it became a federal holiday. Now, for a little bit more context for the speech, who was Frederick Douglass? Frederick Douglass was born a slave in 1818 in Talbot County, Maryland. He lived a long life. He didn't die until 1895. That meant he lived through the Civil War. He met all the presidents subsequent from Lincoln on down, and his son served in the Civil War. But though he was born in slavery, he was a brave and determined young man. He learned to read and write, even though it was illegal to teach slaves how to write. He learned the caulking trade, both of which would be instrumental in his successful escape to the North in 1838. After a short stay in New York City, Douglass and his wife, Anna Murray, left the city for New Bedford, Massachusetts, so it's local. They had determined that New Bedford's shipping industry would offer Douglass the best chance to find work as a ship caulker. However, despite Douglass's previous work experience, racial prejudice in New Bedford prevented him from working in his trade. Consequently, Douglass spent his first years in Massachusetts working as a common laborer. But in New Bedford, he discovered the abolitionist movement, which led him to an anti-slavery society meeting in Nantucket in 1841. That's where he gave his first public speech. The people, as I imagine you will be tonight when you hear his words, were absolutely awestruck by his eloquence, and so much so that some said you couldn't have been a slave. Douglas' extemporaneous speech was lauded by his audience, and he was recruited as an agent for the group. Thus, by 1852, when he gave the speech you'll hear tonight, he was a well-traveled and well-known, commanding and compelling abolitionist orator. What was happening in the country in 1852? Well, though it was 8 years before the Civil War when he gave this speech, the nation was unified in name only. The prior compromises, including those embedded in the U.S. Constitution that had held the nation together, half slave and half free, could no longer hold. A final compromise, the Compromise of 1850, an attempt to shore up the Union, only widened the divide. It failed to resolve the controversy over the admission of the new slaveholding states to the Union. It passed an even more restrictive Fugitive Slave Act, which was bitterly resented by the northern states. And across the country, people were thinking and arguing about slavery, abolitionism, and the future of the nation. So in 1852, what stage did he step upon? He was invited by the Rochester, New York Ladies Anti-Slavery Society to give this speech on July 5th. The Rochester, New York Ladies Anti-Slavery Society was part of a wide-based, broad movement of primarily white northern women who actively campaigned to end slavery. Thus, when they invited him to give his speech, they expected him to champion the abolitionist cause, but also to be a standard bearer for the nation's revolutionary ideals. He did not disappoint. He provides a detailed condemnation of slavery, but then demands in no uncertain terms that they at last live up to the nation's professed ideals. As stated in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let us now turn to the speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, with our first reader.
Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way, for it is true that I have often had the privilege to speak in this beautiful hall and to address many who now honor me with their presence. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is to me a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude.
This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I'm glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in that thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon.
Fellow citizens, the simple story is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government, England as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed in the exercise of its parental prerogatives upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, it deemed wise, right, and proper.
But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and although such as ought not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need to say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with those of your fathers. Feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victim of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at this distance of time, regard it. The timid and the prudent of this day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful, but amid all their terror and affrighted versifications against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on, and the country with it.
On the 2nd of July, 1776, the old Continental Congress, to the dismay of lovers of ease and the worship of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions, drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equaled. Resolved, that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown. Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny.
Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. They loved their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that that is a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country.
They were peacemen, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times. How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength into the distant future, fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises in grandeur about you. Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary.
My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and His cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful.
But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you, this day, rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, but not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them.
My subject then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future.
Standing with God and the crushed and the bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just.
I fancy I hear someone of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more? Denounce less? Would you persuade more? Rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue?
Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of the laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will submit a white man to the like punishment. What is this but acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? Southern statute books covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue with you that the slave is a man.
For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that, while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men.
Would you have me argue that a man is entitled to liberty? That he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter of beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
What am I to argue that is wrong to make them men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with a lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply.
What, then, remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine? That God did not establish it? That our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such argument is past. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability, and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages.
There is not a nation on this earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world. Search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation. And you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without rival.
Take the American slave trade, which is especially prosperous just now, and carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this Confederacy. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called the internal slave trade in order to divert from it the horror with which the foreign slave trade is complemented. That trade has long since been denounced by this government as piracy, as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of God and of man. It is, however, a notable fact that, while so much execration is poured out by Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
Behold a practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what it is, swine drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation with droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market at New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or in lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill.
Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-curdling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locks thinned and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, on that young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her briny tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See, too, that girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of her mother from whom she has been torn. The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly, you hear a quick snap, like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank, and the chains rattle simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have been torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of a slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you just saw with the babe. Her speed has faltered under the weight of her child, and her chains, that gash on her shoulder, tells her, move on.
Follow the drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where under the sun you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the United States.
Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today in active operation in this boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets, where the victims are to be sold
like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men.
By an act of the American Congress not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but it is now an institution of the whole United States. The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go, may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these are, man is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. By that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for men. Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your secretary of state, enforce as duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and without a moment's warning hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage and to all the rights in this republic, the rights of God included.
For black men, there are neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery, and $5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any two villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side. And that side is the side of the oppressor. Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic, Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound in deciding the case of a man's liberty to hear only his accusers, in glaring violation of justice, in shameless disregard of the forms of administering law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent. This fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation.
Americans,
Your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your hatreds at the crowned heads of Russia and Austria and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina. You invite to your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad, honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, and pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your own land, you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill.
You discourse eloquently on the dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which in its very essence casts a stigma upon labor. You bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-pence tax on tea, yet wring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of the earth, and hath commended all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate, and glory in your hatred, all men whose skins are not colored like your own. You declare before the world, and are understood by the world to declare, that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet you hold securely in a bondage, which according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than the ages that which your father rose in rebellion to oppose a 7th part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing. And by a word to a mockingbird, be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever.
Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I, therefore, leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions. My spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot around in the same old path of its fathers without interference.
The time was when such could be done. but a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. In the fervent aspirations of William Lord Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it. God, speed the year of Jubilee the wide world over, when from their galling chains set free, the oppressed shall vilely bend the knee and wear the yoke of tyranny like brutes no more. That year will come, and freedom's reign to man his plundered rights again restore. God, speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow. In every clime be understood the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil, good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend, each foe.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind attention. We will conclude with a song in just a moment, but I wanted to just acknowledge your presence and thank you so much, and all the people in the Bourne Historical Society, to let you know that the Bourne Public Library has a wonderful bibliography on their homepage if you'd like to learn more. And I just also wanted to know if anybody had a comment or a question, anybody wants to speak now, to go ahead and feel free. It's a lot to take. I think what I hope is that this really touches both your minds and your hearts, as Frederick Douglass would have wanted, and to think, something that we cherished in our 4th of July celebrations, that we might enter into that 4th of July and let it move us. Let us have different conversations. Let it expand our ideas of freedom and democracy, and let us, have this resonate within us as we go forward. And I think I'll just let it sit and settle. But we hope you'll have discussion and continued conversation once the program ends among yourself, and there's still food and so forth. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I want to give a special thank you to our partners in this endeavor, the members and friends of the Bourne Historical Society who have supported us through the years and into today, the Bourne Wareham Race Amity Group, the Jonathan Bourne Public Library, both Mass Humanities and the Massachusetts Cultural Council, our project scholar, Donna Denizet, our wonderful moderator, Dr. Maggie Lowe, the staff and the volunteers at Aptucxet. This beautiful setup that they provided us here was incredible. We had so many wonderful behind-the-scenes volunteers also. Diane Flynn, Lauren Robinson, Joya Dimmick, Cheryl Ellis, Diane Ellis, Bridget Ellis, PJ Peroni, Howard Robinson moved a lot of tables and chairs. So many people, too many individuals to thank, but so many people have helped us do this today. When we think about great men like Frederick Douglass, sometimes you can lose the human in the great man. And so we do, I hope that you will visit our pavilion building where we have some information set out to tell the story of Douglass in photos and text. And we have a special sweet treat for you this evening that goes along with a story. So as the designated storyteller of this evening, we have a very human story about Frederick Douglass that touched us and inspired us during this process. And it had to do with the fact that Frederick Douglass, like many enslaved people, did not have the privilege of knowing his own birthday. And so once he became a freed man, he chose his birthday, and he chose February 14th. His reason for choosing February 14th was that he had a very cherished memory of being cherished by his own dear mother, who presented him with a heart-shaped ginger cake in a moment where he needed to be buoyed, a moment where he was sad as a child. Frederick Douglass did not know his mother very long into his life, but he clung to that memory, to his knowledge that this great man that became a great man, was at one point a cherished and loved child by a shining, loving mother. So my shining and loving mother has made lovely ginger cakes for everybody here, along with a little explanation of that story. So if you haven't gotten a ginger cake, as we conclude, I invite you to visit the pavilion, pick up your ginger cake made with a mother's love, and check out the information that we have about Frederick Douglass for you to peruse. So as we began in unity, we want to end in unity with a song. And this next song, we think about the Song of America, the song of the Bourne Historical Society, and we all love America the Beautiful because we all know it. But the things that we know and love, we will hold on, but we want to write the next verse of the Song of America, the next verse of the Song of Bourne and of our society. So I want to invite again Maureen Dunn to sing a new verse of America the Beautiful to close us out. Maureen?
And thanks to Mavis. If you don't know this verse, sing anything you want or hum, because this is all about singing and being together. It's on the back of the program, I guess. Someone just told me. Oh, beautiful for human lives, whose rights are justified, our duty to protect the ones who would be cast aside. America, America, this strength we must embrace. May each new dawn shine bright upon your ever-changing face. America, America, God shed your grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you.
And a big thank you to all our wonderful readers today. They worked so hard and they were such an important part of this. Thank you, readers.